के ललित सखी गुण रमित विशाखे राधे जय जय माधव दैते राधे जय जय माधव दैते करुणां कुरु मयि करुणाभरीते करुणां कुरु मयि करुणाभरीते सनक सनतन वर्णित चरिते सनक सनतन वर्णित चरिते राधे जय जय माधव दैते राधे जय जय माधव दैते हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे राधे जय जय माधव दैते थैंक यू माताजी हरे कृष्णा
Thank you, Prabhuji. Sorry, thank you, Mataji. Yeah, we can start the session.
Hare Krishna. So we'll get started with some prayers. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Vadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Amritamscha. So, Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrinda Vaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya. Just in the interest of time, I've kind of taken a shortened version of the Mangalacharya so that we can focus on the session. So we're supposed to be covering the chapter, the most confidential knowledge. So we'll be starting from verse 12 and going up to verse 17. Okay? So I'll share my screen, then we'll make progress. One moment, I'm just trying to see how to share. Please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, so we'll start. Mogasha Moga Karmano Moga Jnana Vichetasaha Rakshasim Asurim Chaiva Prakritim Mohinim Sritaha. Somebody can read the translation.
Yes, Prabhuji, shall I?
Yes.
Those who are thus bewildered are attracted by demonic and atheistic views. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated. Shall I read purport, Prabhuji?
Yes, unless anyone else wants to read the purport, otherwise Mataji can go.
Can I read, Prabhuji? Hare Krishna, Shilpa Mataji.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. There are many devotees who assume themselves to be in Krishna consciousness and devotional service, but at heart do not accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna as the absolute truth. For them, the fruit of devotional service, going back to Godhead, will never be tasted. Similarly, those who are engaged in fruitive, pious activities and who are ultimately hoping to be liberated from this material entanglement will never be successful either, because they deride the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. In other words, persons who mock Krishna are to be understood to be demonic or atheistic. As described in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, such demonic miscreants never surrender to Krishna. Therefore, their mental speculations to arrive at the absolute truth, bringing them to the false conclusion that the ordinary living entity and Krishna are one and the same. With such a false conviction, they think that the body of any human being is now simply covered by material nature, and that as soon as one is liberated from this material body, there is no difference between God and himself. This attempt to become one with Krishna will be baffled because of delusion. Such atheistic and demonic cultivation of spiritual knowledge is always futile. That is the indication of this verse. For such persons, cultivation of the knowledge in the Vedic literature like the Vedanta Sutra and the Upanishads is always baffled. It is a great offense, therefore, to consider Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to be an ordinary man. Those who do so are certainly deluded because they cannot understand the eternal form of Krishna. The Brihad Vishnu
Smriti.
Smriti clearly states, Yo veti bhautikam deham krishnasya param matah manah
Param Atmanah.
param atmanah sa sarvamad bahis karyah srauta smarta
Srauta Smartha
srauta
Vidanatah.
smarta vidanatah mukham tasya valokyapi sarchelam snanam
Achare.
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 One who considers the body of Krishna to be material should be driven out from all rituals and activities of the Shruti and Smriti. And if one by chance sees his face, one should at once take bath in the Ganges to rid himself of infection. People jeer at Krishna because they are envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Their destiny is certainly to take birth after birth in the species of atheistic and demonic life. Perpetually, their real knowledge will remain under delusion, and gradually they will regress to the darkest region of creation. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thanks so much, Mataji. So it's a very interesting purport, and let's look at the context from where we are coming, right? That will also help you place this verse in the overall context of what's being discussed as part of chapter 9, which is the confidential knowledge. Now, prior to this, the previous speaker might have covered our Jananti Ma Muda, right? That shloka, right? Now, what is being discussed? So the context here is that though Krishna is the source of all the three Purusha avatars, right? Which are the three Purusha avatars? One is Karma. Yeah, please go ahead, Ma. Yes.
Karanodakshaya Vishnu, Garbhodakshaya, and Kshirodakshaya Vishnu.
Yes, absolutely. So Krishna is the source of all these three Purusha avatars, right? And he, of course, we'll see that in further shlokas in Bhagavad Gita on why Krishna appears in this world. Without stealing the thunder of the next speaker's content. So Krishna comes for, let's say, for the time being, comes for the pleasure of the devotees, right? Of course, he can kill demons as, he'll do it like a hobby, but he comes primarily to give pleasure to the devotees. So therefore, he appears. Now, what happens is, many of the people in this world, when they see Krishna in this human form, they kind of deride him. They think, okay, he's son of Vasudeva and Devaki, but they misunderstand him to be an ordinary human being, right? Now, the shloka number 11 and 12 talks about such people who are foolish, right? Who deride Krishna, who consider Krishna to be an ordinary human being. Their characteristics have been described. Okay, so now Krishna describes here that what is the fate of such people, right? Who basically consider him as an ordinary human being. So there are three categories of people which has been discussed here. The first category is bhaktas, who consider Krishna's form to be ordinary. So they do not get Sayujya, Salokya Mukti. So of course, there are many forms of Mukti. Salokya is having the same place where Krishna resides. That means wherever Krishna resides in the Goloka Vrindavan. So finding, when Prabhupada says going back to Godhead, means going back to Goloka Vrindavan, right? So they don't find their place there, right? So there are bhaktas, and we'll kind of dissect, or we'll understand who are these type of people, because bhaktas are always supposed to be very favorable to Krishna, right? Why would they actually consider Krishna as an ordinary human being? That is one. The second is basically karmis, who are baffled in their fruitive activities, and they will not go to heavenly planets. So bhaktas will not go to Goloka Vrindavan. Karmis will not go back to, by the strength of their fruitive activities, they will not go to heavenly kingdom, heavenly planets. And then you have jnanis, who will not get the result of cultivating knowledge, which is meant for liberation. So what is it's very aligned with the destinations, the three types of, or three categories of people want. Bhaktas want, of course, they want to serve the Lord perennially. And that can happen seamlessly if they are in Goloka Vrindavan. Karmis, they want to do all these fruitive activities so that they can enjoy more. So they want to go to heavenly planets, and then they want to rule like Indra, right? And then jnanis want, they are infatuated by, obsessed with knowledge. So by strength of their knowledge, they are seeking liberation. So all the three results of these three types of classes of people, their results are defeated, right? That's what Krishna is saying. And not just that, they are going to be deluded by Maya, right? First is, they don't get their destination. Second is, they'll get deluded by Maya, and they'll get attracted to the atheistic and demonic views of other people around. So one may ask, how come in devotees we see such people who have lack of faith, who basically kind of deride, or they kind of do not have, they're basically considering Krishna to be an ordinary human being in cases. So it happens because of lack of faith. So there are, for example, how can Krishna perform Rasa Leela? Now, some devotees may be bewildered by such a pastime, right? They may agree, so they kind of are making their opinion about, this is what Krishna should do, this is what Krishna cannot do, right? They do not understand the fact that behind every pastime of Krishna, there is only divinity, right? That lack of understanding can actually make their faith a little feeble, right? And they may be on the shaky grounds, and they may periodically deride Krishna, thinking he's an ordinary human being, right? So that's one thing. So basically, one is this aspect which bewilders the devotees. The other is that even though I understand the activities of the Supreme Lord, but I need to trust that all these pastimes of the Lord is divine in nature, right? And so one of the things which basically deludes the devotees is this lack of faith, right? Sometimes I'll give an example, another example which is more realistic. See, sometimes it so happens that we get hit by problems in life where a person may actually stop chanting. It happens even with devotees. Suddenly, something has struck hard. Somebody's probably lost his job or something. The faith is shaky, right? So those are the aspects which kind of also, once there's a lack of faith, bhakti cannot be built on a platform where the faith is shaky, right? So faith has to be absolutely rock solid. So the other one is that's why reading up philosophy is important, right? Sometimes many devotees, they feel attracted to reading the pastimes of the Lord. Of course, they should do that. Pastimes of the Lord is as much worth hearing and relishing as much as Lord's names, form, shape, etc. They are non-different, no doubt about it. But once we understand the philosophy, that not everything about God can be understood, right? Once we understand that we cannot understand the God through philosophy, and when we go through pastimes, we apply our intellect to see, yes, with God that is possible. But if we strictly go by logic, Now, how can Krishna lift Govardhan Parvat? By law of physics, it's not possible that in a tiny finger, a big mountain cannot be sustained. But then when we understand that not everything about God, we can understand that easily, or we are not anybody to understand about God completely, then we understand that yes, it's possible because he's God. Right? He's perfectly capable of performing those superhuman pastimes. So the other one where, some of the other type of people, they get bewildered is Lord performs Ras Leela. So what stops me from performing that? Let me also have some affairs here. Right? So that's where it's very important to ground ourselves properly in the philosophy, that we are able to appreciate the pastimes of the Lord in a much better way, right? In a more holistic way, and we are more accepting of the Lord, right? So just to recap, three things have been talked about here, and we'll definitely go through some specific areas. Secondly, with karmis, we've seen that they can't they can't attain heavenly planets because they deride Krishna to be an ordinary human being, right? Which is absolutely Krishna. Whenever he performs his pastimes, he comes as the original personality of Godhead. In his original form, he appears in this world, right? So that is to be understood very clearly, very, very important, right? So that's the aspect which is being talked about. Now, the last shloka here, which Prabhupada mentions, is, I think we covered the first few, and then the last bits, let's read through. One who considers the body of Krishna to be material should be driven out from all rituals and activities of the Shruti and Smriti, right? So can anyone give me an example of what is Shruti and what is Smriti?
Shruti is Bhagavad Gita, Prabhuji.
Okay, and what is Smriti?
Remembrance.
In fact, Bhagavad Gita is also Smriti, I think, Prabhuji.
Yeah, Bhagavad Gita comes in that, Mataji. Bhagavad Gita comes in that, it's sometimes called Shruti and sometimes called Smriti. Let's keep Bhagavad Gita out. But let's talk about other, Vedic scriptures that are available to us, where we are very clear. This is Shruti, this is Smriti. Haribol? Anybody who wants to take it?
Upanishads are Shruti, Prabhu.
Upanishads are, okay. Okay.
So, how like Parishit Maharaj, how we heard.
Right.
I don't know, Prabhu, sorry.
So
Prabhu, I
Smriti-
don't know whether I'm right or not, but Smriti could be Srimad Bhagavatam, that we are remembering the God by understanding him.
Upanishads is Smriti, Prabhu, and Shruti is Bhagavatam, as Shilpa Mataji just said.
So typically Shrutis, the Puranas, Itihasas, all that is part of Shrutis, right? And Smritis is basically Vedas, Upanishads, and others, right? So one thing which, of course, that's technicality, but why do these Itihasas and Puranas exist, and what is their association with Vedas? Anybody can take a guess at that? So as an example, most of these Puranas, Bhagavad Purana is one, Itihasas, you have Ramayana, Mahabharata, etc. So why do these scriptures exist, and what is their association with Vedas?
For laymen to understand, Prabhuji, I mean, for people to understand better, why? Because it
Yes.
might be too bewildering if at all it is one subject which is vast.
Wonderful, Divya Mataji, did you answer that?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Wonderful answer, Mataji. That's absolutely correct. So Vedas is meant, it's got that very difficult language, right? And it's not easy to understand. So you need to, in isolation, you will only get bewildered by that flowery language of Vedas, right? Which Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita also. However, with this Ramayana and Mahabharata, the extract of Vedas or the key messages of Vedas is illustrated through life of pastimes of the Lord, right? In both the cases. So it's very easy. Now we get the essence of all the Vedic knowledge through story. and through, actions done by the Lord. And we can more easily apply that in our lives. So that's the reason. Very true. Very nice answer, Divya Mataji. Okay. Any other question? And the last bit, which is very important here, in this particular shloka, that there, so after Shruti and Smriti, and if one by chance sees his face, whose face? Person who considers Krishna's body to be material. If someone sees his face, one should take bath in the Ganges to get rid of that infection. So it's more infectious than corona, right? See, corona spreads only if there is some physical proximity, right? Somebody sneezes, something like that happens, then that spreads. But just a visual look, somebody looks at such a person even from a distance, he's going to be infected, and he has to take bath in the Ganges to purify himself. So, and people jeer at Krishna because they are envious of the Supreme Personality of God. How come he's able to do all of this, right? All those bits, right? Their destiny is certainly to take birth after birth in the species of atheistic and demonic life, right? So they progress in that path. Perpetually, their real knowledge will remain under delusion, and gradually they will regress to the darkest region of creation. So hellish planets, those bits, right? So they continue to struggle. So that's the reason, now that we are in this path, now that we get along on every Friday and find a very good time to get some Krishna Katha, speak about Bhagavad Gita, in some cases Bhagavatam, let's make this life perfect. The age of Kali is only going to deteriorate. So let's not waste any more time in any other business. Of course, whatever is important for our sustenance, that should be on. But let's make our current life perfect and just cut our losses for the next few janmas if you were to ever take birth, right? So any questions before I go to the next one?
Prabhuji, can you just repeat that what is Shruti and what is Smriti?
Right. So Shruti is basically what is said, right? And Smriti is what is remembered, right? So typically, this, Puranas, Itihasas can come under Shruti, and Smriti, typically Vedas, Upanishads can come.
Okay, Prabhuji, thank you.
Okay. Let's get to the next one. Mahatmanastu mam partha devim prakritim ashritah bhajanti ananya manaso nyatva bhutadim avyayam. Anybody can read the translation?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes.
Pranam.
Yes, Mataji, please go ahead.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. O son of Pratha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. Purport also, Prabhuji.
Unless any other Mataji, anybody else wants to read, just wanted to make sure that we cover.
Okay,
Shall I read, Prabhuji?
Yes, Mataji, please go ahead.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. In this verse, the description of the Mahatma is clearly given. The first sign of a Mahatma is that he is already situated in the divine nature. He is not under the control of material nature. And how is this affected? That is explained in the 7th chapter. One who surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, at once becomes freed from the control of material nature. That is a qualification. One can become free from the control of material nature as soon as he surrenders his soul to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is a preliminary formula. Being marginal potency, as soon as a living entity is freed from the control of material nature, he is put under the guidance of spiritual nature. The guidance of the spiritual nature is called Daivi Prakriti, divine nature. So when one is promoted in that way by surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one attains to the stage of great soul, Mahatma. The Mahatma does not divert his attention to anything outside Krishna because he knows perfectly well that Krishna is the original Supreme Person, the cause of all causes. There is no doubt about it. Such a Mahatma or a great soul develops through association with other Mahatmas, pure devotees. Pure devotees are not even attracted by Krishna's other features such as the four-armed Mahavishnu. They are simply attracted by the two-armed form of Krishna. They are not attracted to other features of Krishna, nor are they concerned with any form of a demigod or a human being. They meditate only upon Krishna and Krishna consciousness. They are always engaged in the unswavering service of Krishna, of the Lord in Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavat.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mataji. Thank you. So this is interesting. Now Krishna is changing gears, right? So in the 11th and 12th shloka, Krishna talked about mudas, foolish people, right? How they deride him by thinking Krishna comes in his material form. They deride Krishna when he comes to this material world, right? Now 13 and 14 talks about Mahatmas, people who basically are in the in Krishna consciousness. What are their characteristics? So Krishna always likes to present dualities in a way that he will bring you the most ugly example and then give you the best example, so that so if I give you a rotten fruit and a healthy fruit, or a good looking or a very fresh fruit, you'll make your choice very clearly, right? So Krishna follows that very nicely. So 13 and 14 is all about great souls or Mahatmas. Now, what is the definition of Mahatma, right? So Mahatmas are those who constantly worship Krishna. When I say worship, it could be hearing about Krishna Katha, it could be chanting his holy names, it could be offering flowers, it could be doing namaskar. All of it is part of what Mahatmas do, right? Now, there is this material nature, right, which we see here, which is Prakriti, right, the material nature. So you'll see this Prakritim word being used here, which is the material nature. Now, what does material nature do? It essentially entangles the Jivatma, right? It capsizes the Jivatma, pushes him, keeps him in this material world and keeps him entangled. And then what happens as an aspect of entanglement or attachment? The Jivatma takes birth again and again in this material world, repeatedly, right? Now, Mahatmas, basically, they are under the protection of the divine nature or the Daivi Prakriti. So there is a very important word here. The guidance of spiritualist nature is called the Daivi Prakriti or the divine nature, right? Now that is, they take shelter of Krishna's internal potency, not the external potency that we see. Now what happens when you take shelter of the internal potency of the Lord? That is liberating. That is essentially blissful, right? Now, so there is a very interesting, analogy which Prabhupada presents in one of the purports in Bhagavatam in chapter 1, right? I think it's probably third or in Canto 1, chapter 4 or chapter 5, between that, where Prabhupada talks about that the air conditioner, right? An expert electrician, when he works with an air conditioner, he can make it warm, or he can make it appear cold. I mean, it can serve the purposes of keeping you warm or serve the purpose of keeping you cold, right? Or depending on summer or winter. Similarly, Lord is expert in terms of making sure that, which energy do you want to believe in, right? And once you place your trust in one of them, Lord will make sure that energy works for you one way or the other. So that's one of the analogies which Prabhupada uses in one of the purports. Now, the other thing is, when we take in shelter of the internal potency of the Lord, it uplifts the consciousness of the Jivatma to the original constitution position. What is the original constitution position? Anybody wants to mention? What is our
Satchitanand,
To be the eternal servant of the
Satchitanand,
Lord.
servitor
Yes.
of the Lord.
Who said that? Eternal servitor of the Lord?
Me, Sudha.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Of course, Mataji, we that Satchidananda Vigraha is basically Lord's form, right? And hopefully, if we go back to Godhead, then you get that original form of the Lord. However, that said, in our position, wherever we are, irrespective whether it is Goloka Vrindavan, whether it is this planet Earth or any other planet, our constitutional position is always Jivera Surapoe, Krishnera Nityadas. We are always his eternal servants. Right? So when we take shelter of the internal potency of the Lord, we are able to revive our original constitutional position. Right? And such a Mahatma, he clearly understands, first of all, that he performs undeviated worship of Krishna. So there is a shloka in Bhagavad Gita where there is a undeviated focus on the worship of the Lord. Right? I'm forgetting the line, but anyway, if anybody remembers. So the focus remains undiverted, undeviated on Krishna's lotus feet. Right? That is what a Mahatma will always aspire to.
Unalloyed service, Prabhu.
Yeah, that is English. I wanted that Sanskrit name. Where it's like, a jeweler. Analogy is something like a jeweler is, you can keep a lot of jewels before him, but he'll be able to pick, no, not a jeweler, sorry, a merchant. He's able to focus on his business, right? Irrespective where he is. It's similarly. So that is one of the shlokas. I'll probably, if I remember, I'll recite the shloka. However, such Mahatmas, first of all, they have undeviated attention to Lord's lotus feet. Second is, they also understand that Krishna is the origin of all the creations and he's inexhaustible. Avyayam. The word Avyayam is very important here. Adim, he's the origin of all the creations and he's inexhaustible. Now, why is that word inexhaustible comes? Because typically, I'll give an example of a firecracker here. So many of us might have lit up that anar, right? So it flowers and it exhausts after some time, right? After that spectacle has happened, it exhausts. Something has come out of it and then it exhausts. However, Krishna is inexhaustible. Billions, there is infinite amount of jivatmas coming in, but he's inexhaustible. He's always there. The energy is always there. So that is very important. Now, what are good examples of Krishna conscious devotees? Uddhava, Krura, Pandavas. They always took shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, irrespective of what happened in their life. Right? Look at Pandavas. Right? They, at every moment, padam padam yat vipadam. So they had miseries in every moment of their life, but they never left Krishna's lotus feet. They always took shelter. Right? So that is very important. Similarly, there's another thing which is a very important point here. Brajavasis, typically people who stay in Braj, right? They also consider Krishna to be an ordinary human being who needs to be taken care, right? So, but they of course, Brajavasis are the highest level of devotees. What is the difference between what I mentioned in the first two shlokas and Brajavasis? Anybody wants to take a look? Make an attempt. So we said in the previous two shlokas that the fools deride Krishna by considering to be an ordinary human being. But Brajavasis also consider Krishna to be an ordinary human being who needs to be taken care of. Now, what's the difference?
That is out of love, right?
Love.
Prabhu?
Yeah,
Wonderful
which you have.
example. Yes, absolutely right. So there is a tremendous amount of love that they have for Krishna, right? And therefore, they are in the category of Mahatmas, right? Now, what about, so Mahatma word is very loosely used, right? I don't want to take particular examples, so you all know what I'm talking about, right? Mahatma is being used very, very easily in the society. Now, what people do in society is, if somebody performs a little bit of philanthropy or somebody has a slightly good disposition towards people, he talks softly, they immediately, take him to the status of Mahatma. But Krishna defines who's the original Mahatma, right? And that definition is what? They are undeviated in the lotus feet of Krishna. They understand their constitutional position, and they basically understand the fact that Krishna is the source of all the creations and is inexhaustible, right? So these are the characteristics of a Mahatma. And we'll go further in understanding. There's, I think, see the other one. Yes. So 13 and 14 is continuation of what Mahatma does, right? And this is a very famous shloka of Bhagavad Gita. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dridavratah namasyantascha mam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate. Anybody wants to read the translation?
Prabhuji, can I read?
Please, Prabhu.
Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination. Bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. Purport: the Mahatma cannot be manufactured by rubber stamping an ordinary man. His symptoms are described here. A Mahatma is always engaged in chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord Krishna, the personality of God. He has no other business. He is always engaged in the glorification of the Lord. In other words, he is not an impersonalist. When the question of glorification is there, one has to glorify the Supreme Lord, praising His holy name, His eternal forms, His transcendental qualities, and His uncommon pastimes. One has to glorify all these things. Therefore, the Mahatma is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who is attached to the impersonal feature of Supreme Lord, the Brahmajyoti, is not described as Mahatma in the Bhagavad Gita. He is described in a different way in the next verse. The Mahatma always engaged in different activities of devotion service as described in Srimad Bhagavatam. Hearing and chanting about Vishnu, not a demigod or human being, that is devotion. Sravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, and Smaranam, remembering him. Such a Mahatma has firm determination to achieve at the ultimate in the association of Supreme Lord in any one of the 5 transcendental rasas. To achieve that success, he engages all activities, mental, bodily, and vocal, everything in the service of Supreme Lord Krishna. That is called full Krishna consciousness. In devotional service, there are certain activities which are called determined, such as fasting on certain days, like the 11th day of moon, Ekadasi, on the appearance day of Lord. All these rules and regulations are offered by the great acharyas for those who are actually interested in getting admission into the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the transcendental world. The Mahatma, great souls, strictly observe all these rules and regulations, and therefore they are sure to achieve the desired result. As described in the second verse of this chapter, not only is this devotional service easy, but it can be performed in a happy mood. One does not need to undergo any severe penance and austerity. He can live this life in devotional service, guided by the expert spiritual master, and in any position, either as a soldier or a sannyasi or a brahmachari, in any position and anywhere in the world, he can perform this devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus become actually Mahatma, a great soul. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. So here Krishna has some hard-hitting shlokas in terms of what does a Mahatma do. So there's one thing I just wanted to mention in the previous shloka. We'll go back and I'll come back here, which is very important as a takeaway, is that, yes, there's no doubt about it, such a Mahatma or great soul develops through association with other Mahatmas. So what does Mahatma do? He associates with other Mahatmas. So always take opportunities to associate, right, as much as possible, so that we can grow each other's bhakti. So that is one very important phrase, keyword I wanted to mention. Now, Krishna talks about few things here in this shloka 9.14. So he talks about a Mahatma makes a constant endeavor to do devotional service with great determination, right? And then he does namaskar, or he offers obeisances to Krishna. And then he's always engaged in this way. So there is a few keywords which come out of this translation, and also the purport is that always, perpetually, consistently, that is a very important word which Krishna is emphasizing. So he's emphasizing on a continuous practice of bhakti. Krishna. Haribol. Okay. So Krishna is emphasizing on a constant and continuous practice of bhakti, not intermittent practice, right? It's not like I like to do bhakti once in a week, right? Or once in a month, I will just sit, or I'll go to temple and that's the time I'll perform bhakti. So bhakti cannot be one-off, or it cannot be ad hoc. It has to be performed continuously, right? And then there is this aspect of different rasas that come in, like Sakya ras, Prem ras. So of course, those are our advanced rasas. So in some cases, bhaktas may look at Aishwarya Bhav and they may worship Krishna that way also. So the other important thing here is that Mahatmas are not affected by these material modes. So they're constantly engaged in serving Krishna. So if you go through this purport, so there is different limbs of bhakti that is described here. Somebody may want to go on mute here. Hare Krishna. Yeah. So Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnoho Smaranam, right? Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakya, Atma Nivedanam. So these are the 9 limbs of bhakti. Now Krishna talks about, always hearing, always chanting his holy names, always remembering him. Now, how much has Krishna simplified our lives, right? Remembering or chanting about Krishna can be done any day, anywhere, anytime, right? There is no Archa Vigraha that you need to keep before you. So there is such a simplification or ease of doing bhakti, right? You can always chant his holy names. You can always remember about him, right? Even when you're doing your day-to-day work, let's say you're boarding a bus, you can chant his holy names. If not vocally, in your mind, you can do that. You can think about his holy pastimes, divine pastimes. So these things are very easy to do. Of course, we need to push ourselves, train ourselves, make it a habit that we can always think about him. And then all our activities are anyway going to be in full Krishna consciousness, right? So therefore, there is this emphasis on engaging all activities, mental, body, vocal, in the service of Supreme Lord, right? Now, the other thing which is kind of a highlight is, of course, maintaining those days like Ekadashi and completely staying away from grains and following our Ekadashi practices. The thing which comes out very importantly here is, not only is this devotional service easy, as we saw, like Shravanam, Kirtanam, performing obeisances, all this is very easy to do, but it can be performed in a happy mood. And why there is an emphasis on happy mood? Because let's say if I say Krishna consciousness can be performed only if you go to a hilltop, bear this extreme weather, put a deer skin, right, and meditate till the anthill appears on top of it. Only then Krishna will be pleased. Or if I say that you have to go to the hilltop, perform tapasya, and you have to stand on 1 feet and raise your hands, and all that is not possible. That's too much of austerity and it cannot be done happily. However, all these activities, just staying Krishna consciousness, applying Krishna consciousness in our day-to-day work, is so easy to do. And when things become easy to do, and when you do it repeatedly, bliss and joy automatically come, right? So that's what is very highly emphasized, right? And it's very clearly mentioned that anybody can do it. Householder, sannyasi, brahmachari. Look at how Lord is so liberal, right? He's opening all channels and avenues for us to reach out to him, right? He's not one of those who says that it's only A type of people, B type of people who can reach out to. Anybody can reach out to me. Probably only thing you have to do is follow these small, easy practices that I'm going to share with you. So that's the magnanimity of Krishna, right? He makes bhakti super easy, super convenient for all of us. Right. So we'll move to the next one. Any questions so far? Okay, so we'll go to the next one. Jnana yagnena chapi anye jajanto mam upasate ekatvena pratakwena bahuda vishvato mukam. Anybody wants to? Read the translation.
Can I read, Prabhuji? If nobody
Yes.
is reading, I have already read, but if nobody is reading, I can read.
Just wanted to shout out anybody wants to read before Mataji reads it.
Yes, I will read, Prabhuji.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Sure. Please go.
Translation by Prabhupada, Jai Shri Prabhupada. Others who engage in sacrifice by cultivation of knowledge worship the Supreme Lord as the one without a second, as diverse in many and in the universal form. Hare Krishna.
Yes. Anybody wants to read the purport?
Can I read Prabhuji?
Yes, please go.
The verse is the summary of the previous verse. The verse is the summary of the previous verses. The Lord tells Arjuna that those who are purely in Krishna consciousness and do not know anything other than Krishna are called Mahatma. Yet there are other persons who are not exactly in the position of Mahatma, but who worship Krishna also in different ways. Some of them have already been described as the distressed, the financially destitute, the inquisitive, and those who are engaged in the cultivation of knowledge. But there are others who are still lower, and these are divided into three. He who worships himself as one with the Supreme Lord, and he who concords same form of Supreme Lord and worship that, and he who accepts the universal form, the Vishwarupa of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and worships that. Out of that, above three, the lowest, those who worship themselves as the Supreme Lord, thinking themselves to be monists, are most predominant. Such people think themselves to be the Supreme Lord, and in this mentality, they worship themselves. This is also type. They can understand that they are not the material body, but are actually spiritual soul. At least such a sense is prominent. Generally, the impersonalist worship the Supreme Lord in this way. The second class includes the worshippers of the demigods, those who by imagination consider any form to be the form of the Supreme Lord. And in the third class includes those who cannot conceive of anything beyond the manifestation of this material universe. They consider the universe to be the supreme organism or entity and worship that. The universe is also a form of the Lord.
Thank you so much. So here, Krishna, so let's recap what we saw so far. So first, a couple of shlokas we saw what are the characteristics of fools who deride Krishna. Then we saw characteristics of Mahatmas, 13 and 14. 15, Krishna now talks about people who worship him in other flavors, right? Mahatmas are constantly engaged in Satatam Kirtayanto Mam Yatantasya Dridavrata. So always remembering me, always meditating on me, taking my holy names, etc., etc. So those are the characteristics of Mahatma. Now there are other set of people outside of this Mahatma category who worship Krishna in different forms or different flavors, right? And here, the aspect of activity, yajna, which is also talked about. If you so there is a jnana yagnena, so the cultivation of knowledge. So yajna is not always those fire sacrifices that we always know, right? Like there's a big, a kund in which fire is created and people are offering clarified butter in it. Not necessary. Even acquiring jnana is also considered a yajna, right? Any activity which is intended to get certain result is a yajna. So that's the definition. So not just fire sacrifices. Now, 3 types of people Krishna discusses here. First is Ekatvena, Prithakvena, and Vishwatomukham. These are the 3 categories of people Krishna is talking about. Now, who's Ekatvena? Somebody who believes I'm one with God. Right? The one who worships himself as one with the Supreme Lord. Right? So he's also, I'm one among him, or one. I'm also, I also have a spiritual soul. So I'm no different from the Supreme Lord. Right? So they worship that way. Right? And the style of this type of worship is called ahangara upasana. Right? They worship Krishna in oneness. They worship themselves in oneness, thinking themselves as God. Right? And then the second one is called Prithakvena. And Prithakvena is basically those who worship Lord in diversity. So they consider, okay, these demigods are also coming from Krishna. So I'll worship these demigods now. Right? So they worship the Supreme Lord in diversity, because Supreme Lord is not multiple demigods. And Supreme Lord is the Prime Minister, and then there is Home Minister, then there are Chief Ministers, there is one for electricity, the way we see our government machinery. So they just kind of worship the demigods, right? That is Prithakvena, and this type of upasana is called Pratiko-upasana. They worship me in diversity, Krishna in diversity, as many forms of the demigod. The third is Vishwatomukham. Now, what is Vishwatomukham? In the universal form. Now, what is universal form? The universal form of the Lord is more around. There is this nature I see, the tree I see. I see this beautiful river. That is also Krishna. Nature is also Krishna. That sun is Krishna. Light is Krishna. So they like kind of they everything that see around, they basically they worship it that way as part of nature, right? That is Vishwatomukham. Now they are basically nature worshippers. So these are the 3 categories of people which Krishna is talking about. They are outside of the category of Mahatma. They are definitely not there. Here, so any questions here? Basically, these are the 3 categories. We can move to the next shloka.
Prabhuji,
Yes, Mataji, please go ahead.
Prabhuji, the Vishwarupa, which is mentioned here, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, isn't it the same Vishwarupa which was shown to Arjuna, or is it different?
Yeah, so this one is what I understood, Mataji, is that this is when people look at universe, Vishwarupa, as in when they look at this current universe, as I said, right, the trees, plants, river, mountains, they associate that with Krishna, right? So it's not exactly the Vishwarup that was shown to Arjuna, which is talked about here. So it's about the form of the Lord, that because we know that there's an external energy of the Lord also, right? Right, which is essentially the material Prakriti, right? So when they look at this Prakriti, they worship Prakriti as Lord himself. So that's the part we're talking about here.
Okay, I just got concerned. Thank you.
Yeah,
Hare Krishna.
yes, Mataji. Okay, so we'll move to the next one. Slowly, yeah. 9.16. Aham kratur aham yajna swadadham sudaham aham aushadam mantroham aham evajyam aham agnir aham hutam. Yes, anybody can read this.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. If no one is reading, can I read?
Yes, Mother, please go.
Translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki jai. But it is I who am the ritual, I the sacrifice, the offering to the ancestors, the healing herb, the transcendental chant. I am the butter and the fire and the offering. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The Vedic sacrifice is known as Jyotistoma is also Krishna, and he is also the Mahayajna mentioned in the Smriti. The oblations offered to the Pitraloka or the sacrifice performed to please the Pitraloka, considered as a kind of drug in the form of clarified butter, is also Krishna. The mantras chanted in this connection are also Krishna, and many other commodities made with milk products for offering in the sacrifices are also Krishna. The fire is also Krishna because fire is one of the five material elements and is therefore claimed as the separated energy of Krishna. In other words, the Vedic sacrifices recommended in the Karmakanda division of the Vedas are in total also Krishna. Or in other words, those who are engaged in rendering devotional service unto Krishna are to be understood to have performed all the sacrifices recommended in the Vedas. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji. So this shloka is in continuation of 9.6. This is 9.15. This is 16. So continuation of 9.15, where we saw the three categories: Ekatvena, Prithakvena, and Vishwatomukham. So this one is about characteristics of people who are Vishwatomukham, right? The people who look at the universal form of the Lord more in terms of associating it with the nature and Prakriti, right? So what do? They basically, they look at the sire sacrifice, they look at clarified butter, that's translated chat, they all associate that with Krishna, because anything that they see, they'll associate that with Krishna. So these are the characteristics of Vishwatomukham. Now, there is a good resemblance of this particular shloka with Bhagavad Gita 4.24. I'm sure you might have read that ahead of few weeks or months back, which goes Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir Brahmagno Brahmahutam Brahmaiva Tena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina. So I was at some point in Chinmaya Mission schools, and we would recite this shloka right before having our lunch, right? So here, all that which was, so the meaning or the translation of this shloka on 4.21 is, a person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. Basically, all that we read in 4.24 in terms of Brahma, here, it has become aham, I, right? So there it is Brahman, Brahma, Brahman as in Brahman, but here it is I, which is, so that's the only difference between the two shlokas. Now, so again, these are characteristics of, people who are Vishwatomukham, how they basically look at the ritual. So they look at ritual, they think about Lord, everything, like they also understand that if you look at the ancestors, right, in the ancestors, basically, we can trace it back to Krishna, and we'll see that in the next shloka. So here, all the milk products are offering, or in the sacrifices, are also Krishna. Mantras are also Krishna. Fire is also Krishna. Five material elements also Krishna. So everything that they see before them in terms of the external energy of the Lord, is they're trying to associate that with Krishna. So again, characteristics of the Vishwatomukham, basically. Right. So, or in other words, those who are engaged in rendering devotional service unto Krishna are to be understood to have performed all sacrifices in recommended in Veda. So if somebody is doing devotional service, right? All these things that are there in Vedas, they are side effects, right? They are already achieved. You don't have to do anything separately to make it work, right? See, unfortunately, people don't understand Bhakti is so simple, right? It's very easily doable. Many people still believe that, yeah, if you do this huge sacrifice, you get a lot of brahmanas, only then, and ahuti is given, only then, Lord is pleased. No, Lord is pleased by our silent prayer also. Lord is pleased by that sincere chanting that we do every day. Lord is pleased by his constant remembrance. So Lord is not looking for all these fancy things, right? Lord is looking for, he understands very well what is possible and doable. Let me give my devotees that recipe. So that's Lord's outlook. So we'll look at 9.17. pitaham asya jagato mata dhata pitamaha vedyam pavitram omkara rik sama yajur evacha.
Can I, Prabhuji?
Yes, Madhu, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
I am the father of this universe, the mother, the support, and the grandsire. I am the object of knowledge, the purifier, and the syllable Om. I am also the Rik, the Sama, and the Yajur Veda. Purport: the entire cosmic manifestation, moving and non-moving, are manifested by different activities of Krishna's energy. In the material existence, we create different relationships with different living entities who are nothing but Krishna's marginal energy. Under the creation of Prakriti, some of them appear as our father, mother, grandfather, creator, etc. But actually, they are part and parcels of Krishna. As such, these living entities who appear to be our father, mother, etc., are nothing but Krishna. In this verse, the word Data means creator. Not only are our father and mother parts and parcel of Krishna, but the creator, grandmother, and grandfather, etc., are also Krishna. Actually, any living entity being part and parcel of Krishna is Krishna. All the Vedas, therefore, aim only towards Krishna. Whatever we want to know through the Veda is but a progressive step towards understanding Krishna. That subject matter which helps us purify our constitutional position in especially position and is especially Krishna. Similarly, the living entity who is inquisitive to understand all Vedic principles is also part and parcel of Krishna, and as such is also Krishna. In all the Vedic mantras, the word Om, called Pranava, is the transcendental sound vibration and is also Krishna. And because in all the hymns of the four Vedas, Sama, Yajur, Rig Veda, and Atharva Veda, the Pranava or Omkara is very prominent. It is understood to be Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you so much, Mataji. So here, please remember that from 16 to 19, so we are in 17. So 16 onwards, we saw Vishwarupa Upasana is talking about the Vishwato Mukham, people who follow, who look at Krishna from a universal form, whatever we see in nature, they are talked about. So 16 to 19 is all about those people. Now, in 17, Krishna says, Pitaham Asya Jagato. I am the father of the whole universe. Mata Data Pitamaha. I am the mother, the maintainer, and the grandsire. So if you trace back, to our origins, so Brahma is our creator. Now, who's parent to Brahma? Of course, he was not born out of a union, but he came from the lotus navel, or lotus stemming from the lotus navel of Lord, Garbhodakshay Vishnu. So again, it goes to Vishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and where does Garbhodakshay Vishnu comes from? He ultimately comes from Krishna, right? The Swayam Rupa avatar, Swayam Rupa form of the Lord, right? Who's the cowherd boy playing the flute. So we can trace back our origins to the creator, the original creator, right? So he's the grandsire. And then Vedyam Pavitram Omkara. I'm the object of knowledge, the purifier syllable Om. Rik Sama Yajur Evacha. I am also the Rik Sama and the Yajur Vedas. So essentially, people who follow the Vishwarupa Upasana, they look at everything around them and they associate with Krishna. You are the father, you're the mother, you're the creator, you're the maintainer, you're the grandsire, etc., etc. So basically, not only are our father and mother parts of Krishna, that is our parents, but the creator, mother, creator, grandmother, and grandfather are also Krishna. So they eventually everything goes to the root, which is Krishna, right? And that subject matter, which helps us purify our constitutional position, is especially Krishna. So when we understand that, our origins, from where we are coming, we know that our constitutional position is to serve Him, right? We are eternal servants. And similarly, the living entity who is inquisitive to understand all Vedic principles is also part and parcel of Krishna. And as such, and all the hymns in the four Vedas, Sama, Yajur, Rig, and Atharva, the Pranava Omkara is very prominent. That is also understood to be Krishna. So again, the next speaker who will cover 18 and 19. Please understand that we are going to be covering Vishwato Mukham in up to 19. And after that, just to give you some outline, 20 to 25, where demigod worship is talked about. Can anyone tell me which type of, I used a word, which type of devotees do demigod worship? Just about 10 minutes back. Anybody? A quick quiz.
Kanishta Adhikari.
No. In the three types of devotees I talked about, right? Ekatvena, Prithakvena, Vishwato Mukham. Three things I discussed, right? Out of the three, who worships demigods? Ekatvena, Prithakvena, Vishwato Mukham.
Prithakvena, Prabhu.
Prithakvena,
Very good.
Prithakvena.
Prithakvena. So they look at Lord in diversity, right? All demigods. Oh, this demigod comes from Krishna. I'll worship this demigod. That way, right? So 20 to 25 will be Pratikosh Pasana, people who follow the Prithakvena concept, basically. So I know I'm very well over time. I'm not sure whether we can take any question. If there are any questions, please do send over WhatsApp to the ICF forum. I'll make an honest attempt to answer. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna, and I wish you a wonderful weekend ahead. And let's all be absorbed in the holy names. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Hare
That-
Krishna,
Prabhuji, thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you so much,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Thank you all. I'll end the call here. Hare Krishna.
Hare
We'll all
Krishna.
meet on Monday.
Yes.